I thought this week about Mary and Joseph searching for Jesus. I guess they would have first perhaps gone back to where they'd been staying, back to their digs. Then perhaps from there they would have gone to some relatives or friends who lived in Jerusalem. But I guess as the day wore on and there was no sign of him, they would have got increasingly anxious. Perhaps they went to the temple to pray for him, but I suspect that when they found him there, they must have been kicking themselves, thinking, of course, we should have known. It's all he ever talks about at home. After all, when they point out to Jesus how anxious he has made them, he replies in effect that they should have known by now where he would be, that he would be about what he called my Father's business. By the age of 12, Jesus is already well established in his identity. That knowing his Father and who he is in his Father is manifesting in Jesus' life as confidence and rest. Mary and Joseph are anxious, but there's no trace of anxiety in Jesus. Their anxiety almost puzzles him. 20 years later, he showed that same surprise at the anxiety of his disciples when they wake him up in the boat during the storm. His rest offends them too. They say to him just what Mary and Joseph said that day in the temple. Don't you care about what we've been going through? Luke finishes his account of that conversation between Mary and Joseph and Jesus with this sentence. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. And that is all the Bible says about the next 20 years of Jesus' life. Now think about that. The most interesting, world-changing, amazing life that has ever been lived by anyone ever, and all the Bible says about it is that Jesus remained subject to his earthly parents and continued to increase in wisdom, stature, and favor with God and man. In other words, he grew. The Bible records Jesus doing the works of God for 3 years after growing for 30 years. He grew in the life of being with his Father, so much that during those last 3 years, he never described his life as a life alone. When people asked him how did he do the things he did, his reply was always to point out that everything he did and said came from being with the Father. His ministry and his life were not for God, they were from God. He was rooted and established in his being with God. So established in his union with the Father that when Philip asked him to show us the Father, Jesus immediately and unashamedly replied, "Don't you get it, Philip? To see me is to see the Father." Now we're speaking this morning about the authority that was manifesting in Jesus' life and later in that of his apostles. And I'm saying that such authority came from a life of being with, not doing for.